In this video, we'll be covering one of the most useful newer formulas that has been added into Excel, XLOOKUP. If you have ever used VLOOKUP and wished it was easier, more flexible, and made fewer mysterious mistakes, this is the formula you've been waiting for. Let's take a look how it works. XLOOKUP has 6 different variables that you can include. 3 of them are required and 3 are optional. We'll cover the first 4 of these today, as these will be what you will mostly use in day-to-day usage. The lookup value is the cell that contains the information you want to find in the larger list. The lookup array is the column that contains the data that you want to search in to find your lookup value. The return array is the column that contains the data that will be returned if Excel finds a match on the lookup value. And finally, if not found, is where you'll tell Excel what to do if it does not find any match at all. Let's see this in action in cell D3. I'll add the XLOOKUP formula, then select F2 as our lookup value. Then, after a comma, I'll specify A2 to A6 as the lookup array, and then I'll specify C2 to C6 as our return value. When I press enter, you see the result we wanted. Now, I want to do a quick comparison of what it would look like if we were to use the ever-faithful VLOOKUP formula instead. We would type VLOOKUP, then we'd select F2 as our lookup value. All seems the same so far, but then I don't simply select column A as my lookup array. I have to select the entire table range, and then the lookup range is required to be in column A. Then instead of specifying the column we want to return, we actually have to calculate the column we need, which in this case is 3, to specify that the return value is the 3rd column in the entire range. You can see it gets the same result in this case. It's just a little more complicated to type out. I know it's simple here, but now picture data that runs for 30 to 40 columns to the right and thousands of lines down. Suddenly, the XLOOKUP variant gets a little more appealing. Now let's touch on something I just said about the VLOOKUP limitation. The lookup value is required to be the first column in your lookup table. So imagine I didn't have the employee ID available to me, and I wanted to look up the department to return the name. Up in cell H2, I'll type out my VLOOKUP, then I'll select G2 as my lookup value. Now I have to select my range for the lookup. I'll drag down column C because that's my lookup range, but the return range is in column B, so I have to include that. But now the first column in my range is not department, it's name. So now what do I put here for the column index number of the return range? -1? Nope, that's not allowed. And of course, we're forgetting that even before the column index becomes an issue, this formula is inadvertently telling Excel to search in column B for the department marketing. So it's not going to find anything anyway. I'll leave the -1 in here, and then type false in the next parameter to only allow exact matches, and it just gives us this error. Now let's see what XLOOKUP can do. I'll delete the VLOOKUP, add XLOOKUP, and set G2 as our lookup value. Then I'll set column C as our lookup range, and then I'll just specify column B as our return range. When I hit enter here, we now see we have our result. There is one other advantage in XLOOKUP over VLOOKUP that I said we would cover, and that is the if not found parameter. If you have seen the VLOOKUP or the if error tutorial already, you'll know that to get Excel to provide a nicer error message than just the unhelpful NA error, you have to wrap the VLOOKUP inside of an if error so that it can be handled correctly. In XLOOKUP, that's built into the formula itself. I'll edit the formula in G2, and after the return array, I'll add a comma, and for the if not found parameter, I'll add employee not found in double quotes. When I press enter, nothing changes as the lookup values are still good. But now, let me change this employee ID to something we know doesn't exist. You see that the department shows our custom message, letting us know that it couldn't find a match, but the XLOOKUP in H2 now shows an NA error. Remember that we didn't change the formula in here to account for the fail condition, so it reverts to the default message. And that's it for XLOOKUP. It's a newer version of VLOOKUP with better and more simplified functionality and requirements. It's easier to read, more flexible, and works in either direction. Once you start using this, you'll quickly consider VLOOKUP a thing of the past. If this video has been useful, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more Excel tutorials.